The saga began, as such cosmic tales often do, with a meeting no one truly wished to attend. The Galactic Confederation, a body renowned for its elaborate gatherings and even more elaborate inaction, was in session. The topic? Humanity, persistent rumor, inconvenient truth, or impending galactic disaster. Leading the discussion were the Ankles, a species whose heads resembled decorative doilies and possessed about as much practical sense. General FLX Rupeldink, speaking with a forced air of authority, declared this an unparalleled opportunity for research and, diplomacy. He gestured towards a holographic projection of Earth, serenely rotating for the assembled delegates. A snicker echoed from the back rows. You mean that preposterous Deathworld we've collectively decided to avoid? Mere Rental, the Confederation's gelatinous treasurer, whose primary function seemed to be calculating muffin expense reports, piped up. FLX, ever the optimist, disregarded the sarcastic interruption. I propose we dispatch a team, our most accomplished scientists, our bravest warriors, our deepest thinkers, to initiate contact, he declared. Humans may possess the secret to enduring Class 13 environments. Imagine the possibilities. He dramatically extended his spindly limbs, inadvertently upending a steaming cup of Gleeborg tea. Imagine what we could glean from them. Learn what? Ripple, a technologist infamous for designing a self-destruct button activated by the word oops, retorted. How to spontaneously combust? Humans are the embodiment of chaos, Ripple continued, they're the ones who concocted bacon. FLX, whose species considered lukewarm soup an extreme sport, cleared his throat. That's precisely why we must embark on this mission. Their resilience, their adaptability, these are qualities. That didn't save the last expedition, Mir interjected flatly. None returned. Yes, well. FLX stammered, perhaps our previous representatives weren't optimal. Last time, well, we sent Commander Ozgo the Undefeated. He was overcome by a bear within a mere 8 minutes. A wave of murmurs rippled through the assembly. Bear, in galactic standard, sounded suspiciously like galactic blender, and the mental image was decidedly unpleasant. Raising his voice above the murmuring throng, FLX declared, we have, of course, analyzed our past oversights. This endeavor will be different. We will dispatch a team meticulously trained in the most advanced survival and diplomatic protocols. He jabbed a finger at the holographic Earth, its continents glowing with a menacing aura. The time has come to confront the legend of humanity and ascertain the truth. The chamber fell silent, save for the slurping of Mia's tea. Then, a slow clap emanated from Yerp Grank, a bureaucrat so ancient, many suspected he'd witnessed the Confederation's very inception. Magnificent, Yerp drawled. Let's dispatch our brightest and bravest to a planet where seemingly harmless fauna possess venomous glands and the climate is actively attempting to murder you. What could possibly go awry? FLX narrowed his eyes. You jest, but history will vindicate this decision. Yerp grinned, his face resembling a prune that had lost its will to live. History needn't bother. Your memorial service will provide sufficient vindication. The mission was approved, not because anyone truly believed in its merits, but rather to avoid another 5-hour debate on the subject. FLX, insistent he was selecting the best the galaxy had to offer, assembled a team. The rest of the Confederation quietly referred to them as the Doomed. This illustrious crew included Zerx Bleep, a botanist whose passion for dangerous plants had once landed him in a medical facility after mistaking the phrase, smells like death for a literal description, Numbers HFY, a weapons specialist whose fondness for overly sharp objects had led to a Confederation-wide ban on pointy pens in his presence, Dr. Pry Gagalak, a biologist with a somewhat unorthodox survival strategy involving befriending apex predators, a theory tested once, with predictable results, and Vnik Pound, a strategist whose only flaw was an ego the size of a small moon. Each underwent rigorous training, simulating natural disasters, building shelters from improbable materials, and attempting to decipher the baffling complexities of human language. Why, one exasperated trainee cried, does a leader mean both a heavy metal and a guide? The day of departure arrived. The team stood before their gleaming starship, the asterisk gargantuan optimism asterisk, a name that sounded inspiring until someone recalled it was also the title of a rather depressing human play. FLX delivered a stirring speech. You represent the galaxy's finest minds and bravest souls. You will journey into the unknown, facing unimaginable challenges. Can we just go already? Xerx muttered, nervously clutching a container marked "Caution, explodes if shaken." FLX shot him a look, then hastily concluded his remarks. The team boarded the ship, engines roared, and the asterisk gargantuan optimism asterisk launched into the void. As it vanished into hyperspace, Yerp turned to Mia, who was already on his second cup of tea. 2 credit says they don't survive the first woodland creature they encounter. Mia, already calculating muffin flavors for his anticipated winnings, simply nodded. Deal. The initial hours of hyperspace travel were spent as one might expect from a group of apprehensive explorers facing a potentially lethal mission, arguing about job assignments. Absolutely no field work for me, Numbers FBY declared, tapping his claws on the weapons locker. Strictly air support. No death bushes for this soldier. Xerx gasped, antennae quivering. Death bushes? You mean they have lethal vegetation just growing outside their dwellings? He frantically consulted his well-worn copy of * Deadliest Flora of the Universe, Volume 37 star. Oh dear, oh dear. They have trees that release toxic fumes upon contact. That's eucalyptus, Pry Gagalak interjected calmly. Mostly harmless unless you're a koala. A koala? Vnik Pound inquired, envisioning another fang predator. Pry adjusted her glasses. A fluffy, deceptively clawed creature that sleeps 20 hours a day and still finds time to maul anyone who glances at it sideways. Fascinating. Wonderful, Vnik muttered. We're doomed. The ship's training modules offered some comfort, if you could call it that. How to Survive Earth, a handbook for idiots brave explorers was both highly educational and entirely unhelpful. Chapter 1, Don't touch anything. Chapter 2, If it's cute, it's probably deadly. Chapter 3, Why running in circles can be surprisingly effective, Pry read aloud to the assembled crew. It says humans have adapted to extreme climates, from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. They're resistant to, well, everything except lactose, Nick pointed out, holding up a note scribbled in the handbook's margin. Reminder, milk can kill them. Numbers looked up from his weapon maintenance. Wait, they can survive a raging inferno, but a cheese platter could be fatal? Precisely, Pry chirped. That's absurd. Numbers exclaimed, grabbing a plasma grenade for reassurance. It's efficient, Xerx countered. Why bother with resilience when predators can be eliminated with PA? He consulted his notes, dairy-based warfare? The group stared at him for a long, uncomfortable moment before collectively deciding to never speak of this again. Despite their bickering, the crew diligently practiced for Earth's myriad dangers. They simulated hurricanes, earthquakes, and the dreaded soccer hooligans, unspeakable, shuddered Xerx. Xerx, in particular, developed a morbid fascination with Earth's natural disasters. Did you know, he announced during dinner, they have something called a volcanic lightning storm? A mountain spews molten rock while electrical bolts explode all around. Frankly, I'm impressed humans exist at all. I'm impressed we agreed to visit them, Ripnik grumbled. As the gargantuan optimism hurtled through the vast emptiness of hyperspace, the crew found solace, or perhaps a twisted form of it, in the ship's training modules. A guide helpfully titled How to Survive Earth, a handbook for idiots brave explorers proved both incredibly informative and spectacularly useless. Pry read aloud to the assembled group, Chapter 1, Refrain from touching anything. Chapter 2, If it appears adorable, it likely harbors lethal capabilities. Chapter 3, The Surprising Effectiveness of Running in Circles. Vnik, ever the strategist, pointed out a handwritten note scribbled in the margin, important reminder, milk presents a fatal threat. He looked up from the handbook, a puzzled expression on his face. Are you telling me these beings can withstand a raging inferno, but a cheese platter could prove fatal? Numbers, never one to shy away from the dramatic, grabbed a plasma grenade as if for reassurance. That's preposterous. Xerxes, however, saw a certain logic in it. It's remarkably efficient, he countered. Why bother with resilience when predators can be eliminated with PA? He consulted his notes. Dairy product-based combat? A long, awkward silence descended upon the group, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. They collectively, and silently, agreed to never mention the concept again. Despite their continuous squabbling, the crew diligently prepared themselves for Earth's numerous and varied perils. They ran simulations of hurricanes, earthquakes, and the dreaded soccer hooligans, unutterably horrific. Xerxes shuddered. Xerxes, in a surprising turn of events, developed a rather morbid fascination with Earth's natural disasters. Did you know, he announced during a meal of nutrient paste, they have a meteorological event called a volcanic lightning storm? It's when a mountain expels molten rock while simultaneously electrical discharges erupt everywhere. Honestly, I'm astonished humans even exist. I'm astonished we agreed to come here, Ripnik grumbled in response. Then there was the matter of human culture, a subject tackled by the ship's AI, an overly enthusiastic construct named DAV, short for Digital Anthropological Virtual Educator. Greetings! DAV boomed one evening, startling Xerxes so badly he dropped his datapad. Today's educational experience, human celebrations. What could possibly go wrong? Ripnik muttered under his breath. The screen flickered to life, displaying footage of fireworks, carnivals, and the infamous running of the bulls. Is that a stampede? Ripnik asked, his eyes wide with alarm. Indeed. Dav chirped. Humans willingly engage in this activity. The danger level is significant, but the adrenaline surge is unparalleled. Willingly? Numbers looked pale, even for his species. They do this for enjoyment? Dav added helpfully, it's considered a recreational pursuit. Deactivate it, Pry said, rubbing her temples. Just deactivate it. The final days of preparation were characterized by increasing anxiety and a distinct lack of confidence. FLX's voice echoed through the intercom daily, delivering motivational speeches that grew increasingly absurd with each passing day. Remember, team, he announced one morning, you are not merely explorers, you are ambassadors. Represent the Confederation with pride, and, well, whatever limbs you manage to retain. Comforting, Ripnik muttered sarcastically as the *gargantuan optimism* approached Earth's orbit. The crew gathered one last time, standing in silence as they gazed at the planet below, a shimmering sphere of blue and green, deceptively tranquil considering the chaos it contained. Any final words? Numbers inquired nervously. Pry adjusted her glasses. Yes. Don't expire. The others nodded grimly. It was, they agreed, sound advice. Taking one last deep breath, they prepared to descend to the world that inspired both awe and terror across the galaxy. The ship's training modules, if they could even be called that, offered a strange sort of comfort. How to Survive Earth, a handbook for idiots brave explorers was simultaneously highly educational and utterly pointless. Chapter 1, Don't Touch Anything. Chapter 2, If it's adorable, it's probably lethal. Chapter 3, The Surprising Effectiveness of Running in Circles, Pry recited to the gathered crew. Vnik, ever the tactical mind, pointed to a hastily scribbled note in the margins. Important reminder, milk poses a fatal threat. He looked up, a baffled expression on his face. So, these beings can withstand a raging inferno, but a cheese platter could be the end of them? Numbers, dramatic as ever, clutched a plasma grenade as if it offered some sort of protection. That's ridiculous. Xerxes, however, saw a certain twisted logic in it. It's remarkably efficient, he argued. Why develop resilience when predators can be eliminated with PA? He consulted his notes. Dairy-based weaponry? A long, uncomfortable silence settled over the group, punctuated only by the low hum of the ship. They collectively, and without a word, agreed to never revisit this particular topic. Despite their constant bickering, the crew diligently trained for the myriad dangers Earth promised. They ran simulations of hurricanes, earthquakes, and the dreaded soccer hooligans, utterly terrifying. Xerx shuddered dramatically. Xerx, surprisingly, developed a morbid curiosity about Earth's natural calamities. Did you know, he announced one evening over a meal of nutrient paste, they have a weather event called a volcanic lightning storm? A mountain erupts molten rock while simultaneously electrical discharges erupt all around it. Frankly, I'm amazed humans haven't been wiped out completely. I'm amazed we agreed to this expedition, Ripnik grumbled in response. Then there was the issue of human culture, a topic tackled with overzealous enthusiasm by the ship's AI, DAV, an acronym for Digital Anthropological Virtual Educator. Greetings! DAV boomed one evening, making Xerx jump so violently he dropped his datapad. Today's learning experience, human celebrations. What could possibly go wrong? Ripnik muttered under his breath. The screen flickered to life, displaying images of fireworks, carnivals, and the infamous running of the bulls. Is that a stampede? Ripnik asked, eyes wide with alarm. Indeed. Dav chirped. Humans willingly participate in this activity. The danger level is substantial, but the adrenaline surge is reportedly unparalleled. Willingly? Numbers looked pale, even by his species standards. They do this for enjoyment? Dav, ever helpful, added, it's considered a recreational activity. Deactivate it, Pry said, rubbing her temples. Just deactivate it. The remaining days of preparation were filled with escalating anxiety and a distinct lack of confidence. FLX's voice echoed over the intercom each day, his motivational speeches becoming increasingly outlandish as time wore on. Remember, team, he declared one morning, you are not simply explorers, you are ambassadors. Represent the Confederation with pride, and, well, whatever appendages you manage to keep intact. Comforting, Ripnik muttered sarcastically as the *gargantuan optimism finally reached Earth's orbit. The crew gathered for one final time, standing in silent contemplation as they observed the planet below, a swirling sphere of blue and green, deceptively peaceful considering the mayhem it held within. Any parting thoughts? Numbers inquired nervously. Pry adjusted her glasses. Yes. Try not to perish. The others nodded grimly. It was, they all concurred, sound advice. Taking a final deep breath, they prepared for descent to the world that inspired both wonder and dread throughout the galaxy. The *gargantuan optimism descended through Earth's atmosphere with the elegance of a brick thrown by a toddler. The ship lurched violently, sending loose items flying and propelling Xerx headfirst into a cabinet marked for emergencies only. We're going to perish. Xerx wailed, clutching what looked suspiciously like a can of industrial-strength insect repellent. No, we're not, Ripnik snapped, struggling with the controls. We're just landing, enthusiastically. The ship finally landed with a jarring thud in a clearing at the edge of a forest. Trees swayed as the engines powered down, and several squirrels paused their foraging to stare at the new arrivals with expressions of deep offense. The team gathered at the airlock. Numbers was meticulously checking his weapons, while Xerx muttered anxiously about something called giant ants. Pry adjusted her field scanner and announced, remember, we're here to observe and learn. That means no gratuitous violence. Numbers snorted. Define gratuitous. Before anyone could respond, the hatch hissed open, revealing Earth in all its untamed splendor. The team stepped out cautiously, only to be immediately assaulted. The attacker was a bee. What in the galaxy is that? Nick yelped, swatting at the tiny insect as it buzzed around his head. A pollinator, Xerx shouted, diving behind a tree. They're harmless unless they sting. I've been hit. Ripnik shrieked, clutching his arm. This is the end. Pry scanned him with her medical device. Relax, it's just a mild toxin. You'll live. Live? Ripnik gasped dramatically. I'll never play space golf again. The team's first true encounter with a human was equally disastrous. Bob Winchell, a farmer with a knack for repairing tractors and a deep suspicion of strangers, had been tending his garden when he noticed the gleaming spaceship parked near his property. "Another one of them reality shows," he grumbled, picking up his pitchfork. The aliens, meanwhile, had spotted Bob from a distance. "It's a human," Pry whispered, her eyes wide. "We must approach with extreme caution. They're unpredictable." Ripnik scoffed. "He's holding a stick. How dangerous can he be?" Bob hurled the pitchfork. It sailed through the air and landed with a thud in a tree inches from Ripnik's head. "Hostile!" Ripnik yelled, scrambling for cover. Bob squinted at the group. "You ain't with the water company, are ya, eh?" "'Cause I already told them to get lost." Numbers aimed his plasma blaster at Bob. Bob stared at the weapon, unimpressed. "That thing better not shoot holes in my barn." Pry stepped forward, hands raised in what she hoped was a universally understood gesture of peace. "Greetings. We come in peace." "Yeah, I've heard that one before," Bob muttered. "Last time, it was a couple of Jehovah's Witnesses trying to sell me pamphlets about the end of the world." "We're not selling anything," Pry assured him, though she had no idea what a pamphlet was. "We're explorers." Bob tilted his head. "Explorers? You don't look like Lewis and Clark to me." "Who are Lewis and Clark?" Xerx whispered to Pry. "I have no clue," she hissed back. Bob scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, I guess you don't look like government types either." "Fine, come on in. Just don't touch the tractor." Bob's farmhouse was a modest but practical dwelling, filled with strange objects the aliens could only assume were trophies from some past conquest. There was a mounted deer head over the fireplace, a shotgun leaning against the wall, and a stack of magazines titled *Popular Mechanics Star. Bob offered them coffee, which Xerx almost drank before Pry slapped the cup out of his hand. "Caffeine," she hissed. "Toxic to half the galaxy." Xerx looked betrayed. "But it smells so friendly." As Bob chatted, oblivious to the aliens' increasing apprehension, he began to suspect something wasn't quite right. "You folks ain't from around here, are ya?" he asked, eyeing Pry's scanner. "We're," Ripnik stammered. "Tourists." "Tourists?" Bob raised an eyebrow. "Where's your RV?" "RV?" Ripnik asked, confused. "You know, your camper. Can't be tourists without an RV." Pry cleared her throat. "We travel light." Bob nodded slowly, clearly unconvinced. "Well, you're welcome to stay for supper. But I ain't got room for freeloaders." "Supper?" Xerx whispered, horrified. "Does he mean us?" "No," Pry hissed. "It's a meal. Humans eat them 3 times a day." "3?" Xerx gasped. "How are they still alive?" The first encounter had not gone as planned, but the aliens had survived, albeit slightly shaken. As Bob set the table, he turned to them with a knowing smile. "Y'all are hiding something," he said casually. Pry froze. "What do you mean?" Bob leaned back in his chair. "You didn't even flinch when I mentioned taxes." Bob Winchell's dinner table was a minefield of mismatched silverware, suspicious glances, and enough rich food to give an ankle a heart attack. The alien delegation sat rigidly, their extensive training proving utterly useless against the onslaught of mashed potatoes and gravy. Bob, oblivious to their discomfort, refilled his iced tea. "So," he drawled, "what brings y'all to this part of the country?" "Can't be the sights. Closest thing we got to a tourist trap is the world's largest ball of twine." Ripnik, desperately searching for a believable excuse, blurted out, "We're studying your customs." Bob leaned back, a wide grin spreading across his face. "Customs, huh? Well, you're in luck. You're looking at the 2-time county chili cook-off champion." Numbers stared at his plate, poking at what Bob had called meatloaf with the handle of his spoon. "Which part of the creature is this derived from?" Bob chuckled. "Meatloaf ain't a part of nothing. It's a state of mind. The team exchanged worried glances. Xerx, who had cautiously tasted a green bean, whispered, "This species, they consume metaphors." Their already tense meal was interrupted by the arrival of Carol Plimp, a young IT technician whose main talents were fixing Wi-Fi routers and creatively avoiding overtime. She'd stopped by to borrow Bob's tractor but froze in the doorway when she saw the strangers. "Whoa," Carol said, eyeing Pry's glasses. "Nice cosplay. Star Trek or Star Wars? What is a Star Trek?" Ripnik asked nervously. Carol laughed. "Oh, you're good. Where's the Comic-Con?" The aliens froze, unsure how to respond. Bob, sensing the awkwardness, jumped in. "They're tourists." Carol squinted at them, her tech-savvy mind quickly picking up on their strange behavior. "Aha. Tourists. Sure." She pointed to Xerx's containment unit, which was emitting a faint, unsettling hum. "What's in the box, then?" "Snacks," Xerx blurted out. Carol wasn't buying it. She stepped closer, examining the group with growing suspicion. "You're not tourists." "We're," Pry interrupted, realizing the charade was over. "We're explorers. From very far away." Carol raised an eyebrow. "How far? Like, Canada far?" "Farther," Ripnik whispered. Carol's eyes widened. "Wait, you're aliens?" Bob, still chewing his meatloaf, glanced over at Carol. Took YA long enough. It didn't take long for Carol to connect the dots. She was remarkably composed for someone who had just discovered extraterrestrial life. "This explains why you didn't know what a USB port was," Carol muttered, sitting cross-legged on Bob's floor. "And why you thought the microwave was an escape pod. You put a sign on it that said, 'Press here for instant departure'." Pry argued, "Okay, fair point." With Carol's assistance, the aliens began to grasp the peculiar logic that governed human behavior. She explained everything from sarcasm to traffic regulations, both of which confused the team equally. "So," Numbers said, gesturing at the tangle of wires Carol had brought in to demonstrate the internet, "this web, it connects your entire planet?" "Pretty much," Carol replied. "It's how we share information, purchase goods, and argue about pineapple on pizza." The room fell silent. "You argue about fruit?" Ripnik asked, horrified. Carol nodded solemnly. "It's not just fruit. It's a lifestyle choice." Xerx leaned over to Pry. "This species, they are more divided than we anticipated." Meanwhile, Bob had taken the liberty of informing his nearest neighbors, which, in rural terms, meant the entire county, about the aliens' presence. By sunset, half a dozen pickup trucks were parked outside his farmhouse, their owners eager to meet the extraterrestrial cosplayers. The aliens, cornered and outnumbered, tried their best to blend in. Numbers handed out energy bars disguised as galactic candy, while Xerx fielded questions about why their spaceship resembled a giant chrome toaster. One particularly enthusiastic local, a man named Earl, insisted on showing them his prized collection of vintage license plates. "These are from all 50 states, Earl said proudly, holding up a rusty plate from New Jersey. Ripnik nodded, feigning interest. "Your artifacts are quite remarkable." Earl beamed. "You'll come back next week. I'll show YA my collection of roadkill taxidermy." As the crowd grew larger, Carol pulled Pry aside. "You realize this is a disaster, right?" "We've noticed," Pry replied dryly. "You need to leave. Lay low. Humans get excited about aliens. Like, Storm Area 51 are excited. This isn't going to end well if you stay here." Pry sighed. She knew Carol was right. Their mission was already veering wildly off course, and they hadn't even begun to collect data on Earth's infamous wildlife. Just then, the farmhouse lights flickered. Bob's dog, Rabbit, started barking furiously at the darkening sky. A low rumble echoed in the distance. "What's happening?" Numbers asked, gripping his plasma blaster. "Storm's coming," Bob said matter-of-factly. Big one, too. Carol glanced at the aliens, her expression grim. Welcome to Earth. Hold on to your butts. The storm that descended upon Bob's farm was a spectacle of meteorological fury, as if Earth itself was determined to make the aliens' visit even more memorable. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the farmhouse and the gathering of locals, all blissfully ignorant of the storm's true magnitude. This seems manageable, Ripnik muttered, trying to reassure himself as the wind howled like a caffeine-fueled banshee. It's just weather, Pry added, squinting at her scanner. We trained for this. Not for this Zerk squeaked, pointing at a tree currently in mid-flight. Everybody inside. Bob bellowed, waving his hat with theatrical flair. The locals scattered, piling into the farmhouse with a practiced efficiency that hinted this wasn't their first rodeo with a tornado. The aliens, now thoroughly out of their element, followed suit. Inside, the farmhouse was pandemonium. Bob barricaded the windows with planks of wood that looked suspiciously like repurposed fence posts, while Carol argued with Earl about the structural integrity of the roof in the face of a little breeze. This isn't a breeze, Earl. Carol snapped. This is a Category 5 freak out. Earl shrugged, nonchalantly cracking open a can of soda. Seen worse. Worse than what ? Numbers yelled, as the walls trembled with each gust. Meanwhile, Rabanit, ever the vigilant protector, had taken it upon himself to defend the farmhouse by barking ferociously at the wind. The aliens huddled in a corner, observing the humans' reaction to the unfolding chaos with a mixture of bewildered amusement and sheer terror. This is lunacy, Ripnik muttered under his breath. This is Earth, Pry corrected, clutching her scanner tightly. Things took a turn for the worse, or perhaps, even more bizarre, when the storm knocked out the power. Darkness swallowed the room, punctuated only by the intermittent flashes of lightning. Bob lit a lantern, its flickering light casting long, distorted shadows that made Zerks jump at his own reflection. All right, folks, Bob announced, his voice surprisingly steady. We're riding this one out, same as always. Stay calm, don't panic, and whatever you do, the rest of his sentence was swallowed by a deafening crash. Everyone turned towards the sound to see a massive tree branch protruding through the living room wall. See? Earl said casually. Told YA the roof was fine. Carol groaned. That's the wall Earl. Outside, the storm continued its rampage, but it wasn't just wind and rain anymore. Pry's scanner began emitting a series of frantic beeps, registering something new, something alive. What is it now? Ripnik asked, his voice bordering on hysteria. I don't know, Pry replied, frantically adjusting the scanner's settings. It's moving. Fast. Too fast. The answer came with a flash of lightning, revealing a pair of glowing eyes peering through the hole in the wall. What the Bob began, but before he could finish, the creature lunged. It was large, furry, and unreasonably irate. A bear. Not just any bear, mind you, but one that had apparently chosen this particular storm as the perfect opportunity to assert its dominance over all present life forms. Why? Zerk shrieked. Why does this planet hate us? Numbers fired his plasma blaster, missing the bear entirely and instead igniting Bob's couch. My couch! Bob roared, grabbing a frying pan and charging towards the bear. No, Bob! Pry yelled. It'll kill you. Bob turned mid-swing, his expression remarkably serene. Not if I kill it first. The aliens watched in stunned silence as Bob, with a heroic, if slightly ludicrous, battle cry, swung the frying pan with such force that the bear actually flinched. For a brief, glorious moment, it seemed like he might actually succeed. Then, the bear roared, and Bob went flying into the bookshelf. Well, that's it, Ripnik declared, resigned to whatever fate awaited him in the great beyond. But just as the bear prepared to charge again, Rabanit sprang into action, barking like a creature possessed. The small dog launched himself at the bear's face. The bear, clearly not expecting this level of audacious defiance, stumbled backward, crashing through the same hole it had entered. In the aftermath, silence descended upon the farmhouse, broken only by the steady drumming of rain on the roof. Is it gone? Xerxes whispered, cautiously peeking out from behind a table. Bob groaned from his position on the floor. Yep. And so's my couch. Your dog's a hero, Pry said, staring at Rabbit, who was wagging his tail as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Yeah, he's a good boy, Bob agreed, wincing as Carol helped him to his feet. Bit strange, though. Thinks the vacuum cleaner's his mortal enemy. As dawn broke, the storm had retreated, leaving behind a battered but surprisingly intact landscape. The alien stood outside, surveying the damage. Well, Pry declared, we've learned one thing for sure. What's that? Ripnik asked wearily. Humans don't survive because they're logical or cautious, Pry replied. They survive because they're utterly, irredeemably insane. Bob appeared behind them, holding a mug of coffee. You say that like it's a bad thing. Before Pry could respond, Carol joined them, holding out a small device. You left this, she said, handing Xerxes his containment unit. Thank you, Xerxes mumbled, though he wasn't entirely sure he was grateful. Carol smirked. If you ever come back, she said, maybe try skipping the apocalyptic storm and the bear attack next time. Noted, Pry replied dryly. With that, the aliens boarded their ship, eager to put Earth and its inhabitants firmly behind them. As they lifted off, Nick glanced back at the receding planet. Are we ever coming back here? He asked. Pry didn't hesitate. Not if I can help it. Back at the farmhouse, Bob watched the ship disappear into the clouds. Well, he said, taking a sip of his coffee, guess I'll need a new couch. Rabbit barked in agreement.